I would like to call to order the board meeting for October 1st, 2019 for the Village of Riverwoods. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. What started out a little rainy isn't quite so rainy now, but hopefully we can get out before the rains return. Roll call, please.
Trustee Chamberlain. Here. Trustee Clayton.
Here.
Trustee Goldstein.
Here.
Trustee Weber.
Here.
Trustee Hollander.
Here.
Trustee Jamerson.
Here.
President Morris.
Here. It appears we have everyone here, so we have a quorum. First item on the agenda would be approval of minutes. I am going to hold that as there are some things that didn't make it into the minutes in relation to the vote that we had and reconsidered, etc. So we will make those additions to it so that it's clear. For example, we didn't have a second revote. We only had the vote to reconsider. We voted on the initial motion itself. There was a first waiver that was actually approved, etc. So given the confusion was bad enough as it was, I want to make sure the minutes are as clear as we can get them. So we will go back through that and address it at the next meeting. Director of Community Services.
No report.
Yeah, listening to the tapes, if you can get it to work, hopefully, looks like we still have one over here that,
Actually, I received instructions from Wendy.
okay.
So first, you're supposed to push it and wait until the white light appears on the button. And then, at that point, you should be able to push again and it will turn green. Ta-da!
Okay, if for some reason it doesn't work, make sure that we get the number on the little tag so that we can identify which ones they not be working. Plan Commission report.
Oh, wait.
Oh, wait.
And you have to hold it down, please.
But how do you see the white?
If there's no
You
option.
let go of it.
You have to
It's supposed to.
We found one that doesn't work.
Okay, now. There you
Oh,
go.
my
Ta-da!
goodness, the magic touch. Cheryl, you're gonna have like 2 minutes.
It's working. It is. Thank you. The plan commission, of course, is actually, was a separate distribution to the board. It's not in the packet itself. So we want to first make sure everyone saw that or got it. The mayor sent it out Saturday. And there's a report from the chairman of the plan commission and then a zip file with about 8 or 9 documents. Does everyone see that?
Yes.
So, to summarize, the plan commission recommended 2 things. One was that the board adopt a text amendment. This just went off.
I don't know. Where's Jerry?
So, the first recommendation was for the board to adopt a text amendment that would add a new type of special use in the B1 district for a hand car wash and service facility. There's a lengthy definition, which is the definition that, of course, the plan commission considered for several months. And then the second recommendation was to, assuming the adoption of the text amendment, to grant a special use for the applicant for a hand car wash and service facility at 777 Saunders Road. Most of the conditions that are suggested to be incorporated in the final ordinance, if the board chooses to adopt one, would be the conditions that are described in some of the narrative materials that are documents in that zip file, where they describe the hours of operation, how the car wash is going to function, what what the components of the building are. The building actually includes a couple of bays for servicing vehicles. And for detailing the vehicles, there was a lot of discussion about the type of automotive services that would be provided. The plans also include a site plan that shows circulation throughout the site, a photometric plan, landscaping plan. All of those are part of the project documents. So the Plan Commission recommendation was also conditioned on there being a final concurrence from the Lake County Department of Transportation. There's a traffic study that the applicant was somewhat delayed in getting submitted. It is in for review, but hasn't yet been accepted. If it's accepted, then that means that traffic circulation and the plan and ingress and egress to the site is acceptable to the county. If it's not accepted, that would probably say they have to do something.
Yes.
They have to revise plans. So while we have the ordinances on for first reading, I would not encourage the board to pursue second reading by any means until we have Lake County concurrence. The other thing is that we've transmitted all of these documents to the village of Deerfield to get their sign off on, well, we probably amend our intergovernmental agreement with them. So the Plan Commission has completed its portion of the work and it's provided its recommendation to documents. If you think proper, then we could invite the applicant to address the board and answer any questions at the next board meeting. That's a question.
I'm sorry, so the traffic study did not get approved? Is that what you said? Oh, okay.
It's in for review.
I thought you said yes to.
No, I was saying if they approve it,
Okay,
we're okay.
I got it. Thanks.
The other thing I'll tell the board is that Friday last week, we did close on the sale of our telecom leases for AT&T and T-Mobile to Landmark Dividend, and their money was wired to our account. And we now have 1.2 something million, 1.28 million in our account. The wire was confirmed, so we're going to receive that. That's all I have for you.
When the applicant comes from the Plan Commission, comes here for the next board meeting, can you ask them to please give us an updated schematic of their signage, because what was given to us still shows the old signage.
Okay, we certainly do that. Are there any other questions?
So,
Mike?
so are we putting this off then until the next meeting? Okay, so has there, I didn't read all the stuff, I didn't realize it came, so I don't know what's in there. I just read the Plan Commission report as I was sitting here. Was there any discussion about the water that's going to be going into the sewer system from that site? And if so, is there anything that they're going to be putting in to recirculate that water, to clean the water? You know, what's that all about?
Well, let me address the first part, that we're not taking final action tonight because we know you just got it, et cetera. Second, we don't have a complete package. So most of it being the first reading. Patrick, I'll let you address the second part.
I don't believe the applicant addressed it directly. Any water that leaves the site will have to go into the sanitary addict.
And what number is your tag on there?
3.
3? Thank you.
Whatever water leaves the car wash will go out through the sanitary sewer. It doesn't leave at the surface, but we can certainly ask the applicant to provide, or his architect to provide more information. I'm fairly certain that all the modern car washes recycle the water to some degree, just so they're not buying water just to do it. sanitary sewer, but I don't think any specifics were provided by the applicant.
I think I for one would like to know more about that. So,
Okay, we'll make a note to get that information from the applicant, and I assume the county has information on that too. Are there any other questions? All right, treasurer's report. I don't think we have one this evening. It's a little early in the month to be doing much reporting. Consultants, Walt Hamilton.
I'm on the agenda, but also just we got a preliminary feedback from our CRS coordinator. We had the audit maybe a month ago. In particular, because we adopted the updated ordinances, building codes at the last meeting, that was the last piece of the puzzle she was waiting for. So her thought is that we should improve by at least one class in our CRS rating. So that'll be another 5% off of everybody's flood insurance premiums.
Okay, any questions for the engineer? Village attorney? Okay, village ecologist is not here. Police report?
Number 5 does not work either. Okay.
And number 4 either.
Mine's
And I only have police activity that is in the packets. That's all I have.
Any questions for the chief? Okay, moving forward to information items. The happy one is the Halloween party is scheduled for Saturday, October 26th. I'm sure the weather will be sunny and warm. I certainly would encourage everyone. I know Daphne is already working on many of the things and following in Jackie's footsteps, which would be a tough act, but I'm sure Daphne will make it that much better. I think we may have a fire walking demonstration. Okay, I should not go there. The next item of business is the 2018 audit report. Bob?
Evening. We have received the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal 2018, calendar 2018, prepared this year by Miller Cooper. I have Betsy Allen here, and I'm going to make a couple of comments and then Betsy will take it over. It's the first year of Miller Cooper. As you know, we changed auditors for last year, and that was actually a very good decision. So what I'd like to do, she's going to kind of comment, I think, on her interpretation of and basically the statements that she needs to make that provide you comfort, I hope. And I will just run through very briefly the financial results, which aren't that much different from what we talked about at the beginning of this year when we looked at the draft 2018. The good news is the general fund ended the year in the plus by about $400,000 or so, not quite $500,000. There was a restatement of the prior year for a couple of items, one that lowered the fund balance and one that raised it. But the fund balance from the restated amount did go up because the revenues was, in 2018 were greater than the expenses. I'm not going to get into detail too much on that, except to say the total revenues collected were just under $4.8 million, and total expenses paid were just under $4.3 million, so $500,000 is kind of the number there. Likewise, in the water and sewer fund, the water fund, although it was in the negative, if you consider depreciation as an expense, but on the operating revenues and operating expenses, its revenues exceeded operating expenses by just over $45,000 for the year. In the sewer fund, however, the
primarily because there wasn't any real major capital expenditures in the sewer fund. Both the revenues exceeded both the depreciated expenses and the operating expenses, so, which actually contributed to their fund balance. The two adjustments, one was made in capital assets. The prior years, capital assets had not been adjusted to take out the old village hall. So that was still on the books. So the fund balance, capital asset, that fund balance was affected by that capital asset being removed. And the other item was motor fuel tax. That was an item that we found here, staff found that in prior years, due to miscommunication of some sort, engineering and non-construction costs were being charged for the road program, for the MFT program, were being charged to MFT. Those should have been more appropriately charged to the general fund road and bridge. So we adjusted, we went back 5 years and found the total amounts and adjusted the balance in motor fuel and reduced the balance in the general fund. If you have questions, if you want to ask me after Betsy's presentation on any of the other items. There are two transmittal letters. One is a transmittal letter, and one is a management letter from the auditor. She can get into a little bit of that.
So I just want to real quickly point out just a few items. Rob's already pointed out some really important things. Really the most important part of the copy that you have is our independent auditor's report. So I want to point out that on page 1. We do have an unmodified report, even though based on the cash basis. Bob did already point out that we do have also on page 2 an emphasis of a matters paragraph due to the restatements that we did. Again, one of the restatements was due to the capital assets that were still on the books from the old building. So we restated the capital assets. The other thing is, which we didn't restate as much as we did it retrospectively, was to begin reporting your investments at fair value. There was a Gatsby statement, 72, I believe, that came out a couple of years ago. Before you report on a cash basis, you do have the choice of whether or not you want to report those at fair value or not. You have a more complex, to a point, investment portfolio, so we feel that reporting those at fair value is a more appropriate way to report those. The only other thing I want to point out in the reports, since Bob had gone through stuff, is the management discussion and analysis that begins on page 4. This is prepared by management. I always tell people, if you don't want to read the whole 100-page report, that the management discussion and analysis is a great place to go. It gives a lot of financial highlights of the village throughout the year. There's also an explanation of the different kinds of financial statements and what they mean within there. There's also some condensed financial statements, which I think Bob was looking at when he was giving some of the highlights, along with some items that could affect the village for future revenues or any other future things going on within the village. The only other thing I want to point out, Bob did say there are 2 letters that we did issue. One of the letters is our required communication to the board letter, where we talk about the basis of accounting and how we perform our audit. There's also a section on page 2 that discusses Gatsby pronounces that were implemented this year and ones that will be implemented in the future. I do want to point out that Gatsby 75, which is a reporting of other post-employment benefits, or OPEB as we call it, was effective for the village this year. The village did inquire of an actuary just to determine that there was no substantial liability. Did receive a letter from the actuary stating that due to the zero participation in the plan right now, that there was no liability produced. We will every year that we're here, check that that's still the case, and then determine if, you have to get the actuary involved further. With the rest of the Gatsby statements, we'll be sure to keep working with the village as they need to be implemented. Also within the letter again, and I don't want to keep stating this, but I just want to point out again that there's information on the restatement and the amounts and what the restatements were for. And then lastly, when the report was issued, management did sign a representation letter and then filed all the appropriate documents with the controller and other necessary agencies. The other letter we have is our management letter. I'm not going to go through each of the items on there. I know Bob has provided some responses to the items that we reported in here. We do have some things that are material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, control deficiencies, and then just some management advices that are in there. And we will certainly keep following up with next year's audit and assist the village in any way to get these off the letter next year and to move forward. So does anyone have any questions?
Yes, no, thank you very much. I just had an opportunity to watch a documentary called The Queen Forces, the situation in Dixon. I assure you, I'm very interested in making sure that we're doing this right. And I would encourage members of the board that's available in various sources to do that. It's kind of scary when you hear about it and think about how much that individual was able to actually.
It did go to a couple of years ago. I drove away, had a showing of it with the lady, she's the professor at DePaul who did the documentary, and she spoke at it, and they showed the documentary and stuff. And we use it in our firm when we do CPEs, and showed it in our firm. It's very interesting, the things that came out of the documentary.
First, I would point out that in Dixon, the same individual requested checks, issued checks, signed checks, made deposits. So
Correct.
we don't have that kind of problem. Although I'd love to find out 56 million is out there somewhere.
Exactly.
But I wouldn't inclined to that way. You still have a few comments you want to make, or do you still have questions?
Just a couple of clarifications following that. I know there was an item on there regarding check signing, and I think it's just, it's one of those things that sometimes the auditors they come in and they do testing, okay? And by that, I mean, they will go to some invoices and pull those randomly. We have to provide everything to them. They will randomly pull invoices, and they will randomly pull personnel issues to check the payroll records. And they happen to pick some checks that slipped through. I can assure you that is not an unusual thing that's going on here. That's one of the items that that typically is a cause for concern, not having two people sign the checks. But I can assure you, most of the time those checks are signed by both, and as you well know, because many of you do sign those checks. The other thing, just briefly on the
Can I just raise this?
yeah, go ahead.
Just like Bob said, remember too, we are sampling. We're not looking at every transaction that's going through here all year. So we are picking samples of items, and usually when we do find something, we usually extend our sample a little bit larger just to make sure it's not a common theme going on throughout the year. So if it was more of an issue, we would have brought it up as more of a different kind of weakness if we needed to.
It's okay if you did double check, just like your comment about sales tax being paid or not. But I know in some instances we might not. But all of our large accounts, etc., all have the sales tax deductions.
Yeah, and I think something to remember too. I mean, I realize like sales tax and stuff being on there, a lot of times immaterial amounts, but they are sort of the rules that you're supposed to follow and not do that. So just remember, there's nothing huge material amounts of anything that happened. They're just.
Well, if you found that it was worth it, then we just re-emphasize the staff to make sure they do that.
I think the checks cleared the bank.
Of course.
Don't assume
I
that
think-
check that the bank is.
I think it could not sign a check and it would probably slip through the bank, to be honest with you.
And lastly, just a little more explanation on what that's you're talking about the other post-employment benefits. The reason that you don't have those, which is unusual for a government, but for any agency, but not so much for the size of this, is that primarily what they're looking at are health benefits that are being provided to retirees, even if they're paying the entire cost of that. Because there's implied benefit, imputed benefit, that because they're typically are generating higher claims, and even though they're paying the same amount that an employee, or we would pay for an employee 100%. If we did, we're not, because we don't have any of our retirees on the health plan. And there have not been any retirees on our health plan for a while. That's, if in fact a retiree does choose to retire and maintain themselves on the health plan, they would have to pay 100% of the benefit, but at that point we would have to do this analysis by the actuary to see if there is some kind of imputed benefit that we would be subject to, which would be very high. But that's the kind of thing. And it definitely is not a pension issue because all of our employees, including police, are in IMRF, and that is 100% off of your books once those people retire here. So.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on, public and private streets review status.
I'm gonna use this one. Oh,
Okay, but it's working, it's just not as sensitive, so I have a data down.
I've been working last week fairly intensively, going through some annexation agreements and some subdivision plats. And partly because of the holiday, but I couldn't pull all of that together. I still haven't gone through a couple of them. But I do have one question I think will shed some light. When Hiawatha Woods was annexed, it was annexed with the express understanding that the streets would remain private in an annexation ordinance. And later, when the area that was Forest Glen, east of Hiawatha, was annexed, their streets in the plat said hereby dedicated. So you have an example where the same name, the street, when it's in Hiawatha Woods, is privately maintained. When it crosses over into the area covered by the new plat, it was dedicated, it says hereby dedicated on the plat. When the village took the area into the village, the streets had already been publicly maintained, so the village continued to maintain them. The same thing was true of an area of Vernon Woods subdivision. The streets would be privately maintained. It was noted in the annexation ordinances, and these were one of the very earliest ordinances of the village. When we get to Hoffman Lane, the subdivision plat says that the property is to be, the street is to be privately maintained. At least on part of the street it says that. And then a couple of years later, owners on the street had asked that part of it be publicly maintained, and there's an ordinance that accepted a dedication of the south half of Hoffman Lane to the village to be publicly maintained. In part, it said because that had been the understanding at the time that it was subdivided that it would be publicly maintained. There had been some failure to follow through or some misunderstanding. I don't know the origin of it. I can't find the minutes going back that far. But what I was trying to say when I first described this project is that if you look at each one of these streets, whether it's either private or maintained publicly in the village, there seems to be a different story. And so instead of having one rule meets all, we have what is the just outcome in each particular situation. So I ran out of time. The next meeting I will be assuming some of these documents, but when you look at a request of petitioner's agreement, a reported agreement to dedicate part of Hoffman Lane, for example, and the village responding to this, accepting this dedication and agreeing to record this dedication agreement. Okay, now we know that at least as that part of Hoffman Lane, the village took action for this to be a public street. given that the village did that, that goes back to about 1962. The question that comes to me, and I'm not sure it's totally a legal question, that's why I raised it to the board. I think, again, it still may be possible for the village to vacate the street. After all, many streets exist because of subdivisions that say hereby dedicated, and you can vacate a street. But given the history that there was a dedication and an acceptance, that raises a different legal question than the other legal questions I've been looking at, which is sort of what's the mechanics of vacation, how did the streets become private, and that is was there an effective contract? Was that an understanding that A, can be breached legally today, if we want to, or B, I guess the question is, should it be? If I find that more agreements where some of these streets were accepted to be public at one point in the past in the village, does the board look at that today and say, okay, that was an understanding we made at the time with those residents? Are we going to revisit that? Do we even have, if you want me to tell you you have the right to, then that's a whole separate, it's a different analysis than what I've been doing so far. I'm assuming that in the absence of any agreement like that, it would just be kind of, casebook law. What's the law of vacation? But I knew that in looking at the history of how these streets some became public and private, we were likely to find things. In this case, the agreement to dedicate and the dedication ordinance in 1962 and the plat that showed what were happening were filed in different places under different names. And I don't have the paper records. I'm just, right now we're searching electronically, and I literally, I could have easily missed the plat that explained what was going on with this dedication. As I was scrolling up and down through the years to look for something, I found this because I was missing something. So it's a time-consuming, I'm trying to tell you, it's a time-consuming process, and I could have very easily missed the fact that there had been a special arrangement with respect to Hoffman back in 1962. That said, the question I pose to you is whether, when there were special circumstances like that, I'm sure you want to know about them, how far should I go in looking at whether that's the kind of situation that you would consider undoing if you had the legal right to do it?
Regarding Hoffman Lane, you said that the east part of Hoffman Lane,
That's Forest Glen.
Forest Glen, was public, but the rest of it wasn't.
The part of Forest Glen and Hiawatha Woods is not publicly maintained, and the part of Forest Glen east of Hiawatha Woods is public.
Is. And we make that differentiation today.
Yes.
And Hoffman, when they came back and said that was part of the agreement, all of Hoffman Lane was included in that, or only part of it?
When they came in 1962, now the Hoffman Lane had been subdivided, I think in 56 or 57. The village was incorporated in 1959. So 3 years later, in 1962, there was an ordinance that accepted the dedication of part of Hoffman Lane. And there seemed to have been, again, I can't reconstruct everything, but one of the other documents from that year decides that there had been a bond put up to guarantee completion of certain work. And I believe what was going on is that the residents had to do certain work on Hoffman Lane. When it was completed, the village promised to accept the dedication of that part of Hoffman Lane that was, either repaired or brought up to some standard. And it's not all of Hoffman Lane, and it doesn't include Wiggum, so that's why you have to look at the plat to see what they're talking about. And it's,
But today, we consider as public all of Hoffman Lane,
and
even though this was only part of Hoffman Lane.
well, I don't know if anyone but me has looked at this document in 30 years.
So what's your question?
I looked at the document. Yeah, I think I'm working on that. Yeah, you are. So I looked at the document. So the plan of subdivision that I looked at with regard to Hoffman Lane shows that the subdivision plat originally showed from Deerfield Road to Wiggum as being private, whereas there's no reference at all with regard to whether the road is private or public from Wiggum to Portline and/or Wiggum, the entire length of Wiggum. And then the resolution comes in after that, which basically says that portion from Deerfield to Wiggum, we're going to accept that because it was improved to whatever public standards. So the inference to me is that the plat didn't have the reference of private road on the portion from Wiggum to Portline because it was already public. Otherwise, it would have had a private road designation on that as well. It doesn't. So something doesn't make a whole lot of sense in that. You know, there's something, why would that be missing? I actually looked up to see whether the surveyor who did that plat was around. His license is no longer active. I think he passed away. It was a guy named Mr. Thacker, as opposed to the survey that was done, I think subsequently. It was a Grumley survey. So I don't even know that the notes are really available to determine, you know, why one thing had private road and one thing and one portion of it didn't.
I think for me, when I look at these, apparently the general rule that was followed was if the streets had already been publicly maintained, i.e. they were township streets, and the township for some reason had recognized them as publicly maintained streets, then when they were next to the village or became part of the village, they were treated as publicly maintained streets. They had already been publicly maintained. In other situations where they had been privately maintained, in half the instances, the people drafting the documents at the time specified that because they had been privately maintained previously, they would continue to be privately maintained when they came to the village. Almost every document that has that kind of language that says it was privately maintained and will continue to be privately maintained. And then there's the category of documents where it just doesn't say anything. And the plat themselves is not 100% clear on what was intended. The streets were publicly or
streets, and that the village becoming all public streets maintained by the village, get some standardization, or, which I recognize might blow through that 1.3 million we just got this week. But it sounds as if that was at least an option, that if one wanted to bring it up to some standard, you could turn it back to the village. I don't know what the right answer is, but it seems that we ought to look at both sides of the coin, and that is all private or all public, because I think the mix is unfair. Now, I don't know, as I say, I don't know what the cost is, but I think it should be as part of the discussion.
Sure.
What I would like to know is, regardless of how the roads began, what are our choices now? And regardless of what the reasoning was at the time, based on our choices, what is reasoning that makes sense now? And so perhaps it's an all public, all private type of reasoning. But what I think is really important is that we look at some consistency. We, regardless of what mistakes or intentional dedications were made at the time, I think if it's within our rights to make changes, we need to look at a system that makes sense and that makes sense for the entire village. And of course, then there can be questions and there should be questions.
Not to mention the how do we questions.
Well, yes.
So I think the other part of the discussion is also the fact that the publicly
My favorite ones.
I'll use this one. Can you hear me? Oh.
Can you hear me now?
I'll start over. So, one of the issues about public-private streets is that currently the public streets are maintained by the MFT funds that we get from the state, which are not insured, that we're going to be getting those in the future, and this went off too. I'm looking with 2 months.
There we go.
Okay. I have a copy of the 290 later if you want to hang around for it. The engineer, the village engineer also did some forward-looking planning, a 5-year plan, I believe it was, Pat, tell me if I'm wrong, and where we will, given the amount of funds we expect to get from MFT, we will end up running out of money to repair our public streets. And the money will be coming out of our general fund, which now becomes a burden on the entire village, which could require taxes to go up, and that could be unfair, as Henry said, to the people who are privately maintaining the streets because they're not subsidizing the publicly maintained streets. So that's the other part of this question. It's very complicated, and so it's going to take some time to figure out. But that's my concern is that the MFT funds are not going to be enough to pay for the maintaining of all these public streets. And if we went to all public streets, we would for sure not have enough money, and taxes would for sure go up.
Yes.
And since everybody is aware that the legislature just doubled the MFT, let me point out that everything that I have read in the last month and a half says municipalities shouldn't count on getting any of that money until you actually got the check and it's cleared the bank. There are so many different levels of where it's going to go and be cut off. They may have doubled the amount, but it's not at all guaranteed that it will be going, or we will be getting any of it by any means. Henry?
Would it be worthwhile, in parallel, to have some financial projections for both possibilities be presented along with the legal recommendations so that we can get a little bit more solid information as to what the mix is now, what the subsidization is of private streets to public, what we think will happen in the future. If we make them all public, what the tax increase might be. Maybe the residents would say we'll pay another, I don't know, $25 a month to have public streets or something. I don't have an answer to that, but I think I'd like to have some financial information at the same time we get the legal.
Well, certainly, this is a financial question in several elements, because to go totally public, I think, would require probably a significant increase in the property tax. Not that it would necessarily be a large dollar amount, but the percentage would probably be very large, given that we're at least a percentage or two below all of our neighboring communities. But as you say, it's a policy consideration. The board can make a choice, and it's better if you make it with facts rather than just emotions. So we'll see if we can figure out some way to do this. It's a little hard to figure out what the privates are all spending. Certainly SSAs, we might have an idea. We'll try to put something together on that if we can.
Well, and one last comment about bringing the private streets up to public standards, which are pretty high. It would be impossible.
We could have a rural standard. We could have 2 standards.
I mean, in Vernon Woods, we're looking at, we have 3.5 miles of private streets. To bring that 3.5 miles up to the standards that we have in Riverwoods would cost them millions of dollars. Because it's going to cost us probably $500,000 just to mill them and resurface them, and they're not even 2 lanes. So, I don't see that ever happening.
Okay.
Well, again, I don't have a problem with at least trying to get some of that data for you,
well. But I kind of believe, just anecdotally, that the reason that a lot of the private roads are in fact private roads is because those residents wanted private roads, because they wanted these kind of quaint country roads, single lane, kind of meandering through the woods, and that is something that they elected to have. So I don't believe that they looked at it as, oh, now we're not being fairly treated because there's other people that have public roads. They didn't want those public roads. And those people who are on public roads, and when those areas, like certain areas in Vernon Township, were platted, they were platted where those owners didn't take to the center line of the road. Their lots go to just the end of their lot. That road is not owned by them, never has been owned by them, never will be owned by them unless the village elects to vacate that road and foist it upon that owner who didn't want it, never took title to it. Now suddenly they're going to have title to something that they never contemplated when they moved onto that property. So it's not only a financial issue, it's more than that. It's what did these residents think when they bought there? What did they want? And now we're seemingly trying to change it. And I've made this point before, there are other inequities in the village as well. But if we continue to try and look at everything in the abstract, we're doing a disservice to the community, and we're attempting to put everyone under the same category. That's not what people want. People in southern Riverwoods wanted meandering roads in nice little quaint areas. People in northern Riverwoods have larger streets. It's a different situation. Some people are on forced sewers. Some people are not on forced sewers. Some people in southern Riverwoods have a different kind of a sewer system, which is more costly on a per capita basis than the people in north Riverwoods. But we don't look at that and say, let's equalize that as well. If you're going to do that, you can't, we are a global community. We can't look at every single thing differently. Otherwise, it's bordering on the absurd, in my opinion. So that's just my comment.
Any other comments? Okay, well, obviously, we have a very easy issue. Cheryl, I see your name.
I was just going to say, I think that you really can't compare apples to oranges. And one point is, what did residents know at the time? And another point is, what makes sense now? And I think we have to look at both of those things.
Well, as I started to say, this is obviously going to be an easy issue to resolve. So that's why you guys get paid the big bucks. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, visitors wishing to address the board?
Good evening. Is the microphone working well?
Yes, that's the one that works.
So I have the best one. Thank you.
It's plugged in and it's the most sensitive.
Yes, wireless fails. As an engineer, I can tell you that.
Could you
So anyhow,
give us your name and spell your last name for the record?
Neil Sinha, S-I-N-H-A, Sam, Indiana, no Henry Apple.
Thank you.
We reside in Cherrywood Lane, and we had a permit in 2013. So at that time, Village of Riverwoods subcontracted to Forester Urban Forest Management, Todd Sin. And during that time, he essentially charges $2,175 for what is called a tree planting program. His assumption was the tree next to the new driveway would die in 2 years. And now, 6 years later, the tree is 100% alive. So it was an incorrect opinion of him because the city can view the tree and it's still alive. So there needs to be a refund for that. What I've done is I've attached the permit, the overall site plan, and also the photo. And certainly the village is welcome to take a look at it and come to a conclusion as well.
And as I noted, or at least I believe Rob has at least passed on to you, there's no provision for us to make any refund in a situation like this. So So the board will have to determine what action item you wish to take.
One more addition, when I spoke to Mr. Singh, being an engineer, I did ask him, that is his opinion, and I had a certified arborist, 20 years experience, he said it will survive. So obviously Mr. Singh was not correct, and he incorrectly charged. And I did ask him, would Village of Riverwoods refund the money? He did say yes. He also stated that he had made that note to the city, the specific tree.
Well, one, we'll have to recheck the record because to my knowledge, we haven't seen the note. I'm not saying it wasn't there, but we just haven't seen it. We'll double check. Second, I'm not sure he was in a position to make that statement because not talking about right or wrong, just talking about what the law is, there's no provision for me to authorize any refund. The board can act on it if the board sees fit. That's all I can concede to you.
But it was incorrectly charged.
Well, it was based upon the opinion of our forester, and that was how the ordinance read at the time. Whether his opinion was correct or not is not what the ordinance was based on. It wasn't a matter, it's a matter that was projected. I'm not arguing with you the merits of your case, the equities of your case. I'm simply stating where our ordinances are right now.
Let me jump in for a second, if I can. I believe the policy that's written into the tree protection ordinance